Good evening, everyone. I've been buried in my garage lately, sorting through dusty boxes, which has slowed my latest installment on James Frazier's The Golden Bough. But this detour into John Updike's Rabbit Redux will weave back to those mythic threads, I promise. In the chaos, I finally listened to Rabbit Redux, a novel I've longed to explore for its electrifying ties to Stanley Kubrick's 2001, A Space Odyssey, and the 1969 Apollo 11 moon landing. It's a raw, unflinching portrait of a man and a nation at a breaking point. Now, I'm excited to dive in with you. Set in 1969 Brewer, Pennsylvania, Rabbit Redux follows Harry Rabbit Angstrom, a 36-year-old linotypist whose glory days as a basketball star fade against a fracturing marriage to Janice, who flees for a lover. Reeling, Rabbit opens his home to Jill, a haunted hippie runaway, and Skeeter, a fierce black revolutionary, sparking a volatile clash of race, rebellion, and regret that mirrors America's turmoil. Vietnam's unrest, civil rights battles, and the moon landing's surreal glow. Updike captures Rabbit glued to his TV as Apollo 11 lands. Neil Armstrong's giant leap is a dazzling symbol of human triumph that taunts Rabbit's personal stagnation, yet fuels his flickering hope for renewal. Meanwhile, 2001's haunting images, spaceships waltzing to Strauss, the Star Child's cosmic gaze, linger in Rabbit's mind, its vision of human evolution echoing his desperate yearning to transcend his flaws, with Skeeter acting as a monolith like jolt to his worldview. These aren't just cultural nods. The landing divides Rabbit's circle as Skeeter slams its billions spent while poverty festers, reflecting 1969's real debates. And 2001 casts Rabbit's shaky growth, housing strangers, facing prejudice, as a flawed earthbound rebirth. Updike's prose makes Brewer a vivid microcosm of a nation torn between awe and anger, with Rabbit caught in the crossfire. To place Rabbit Redux in Updike's Rabbit tetralogy, we have Rabbit Run from 1960, where at 26, Rabbit bolts from 1950s domesticity, chasing personal freedom. Rabbit Redux, as I just described, from 1971, where Rabbit is 36 years old. Rabbit is Rich from 1981. At 46, Rabbit navigates 1970s wealth and family strife haunted by past choices. And Rabbit at Rest from 1990. At 55, Rabbit faces mortality in the 1980s, his journey ending in death. Redux pivots from Rabbit's inward rebellion to confronting a divided society, setting up his later arcs of prosperity and decline. For deeper insights, I recommend Jack DeBellis's essay, John Updike's Use of Kubrick's 2001 in Rabbit Redux, from scrapsfromtheloft.com, which unravels the film's transformative spark, and Stephen Bonifacio's thesis, A Reexamination of Rabbits, at opus.govst.edu for its take on 1969's cultural pulse. These will light up Updike's genius for you. So, Jordan, if we could go to the second slide now. So, Rabbit Redux is not the only Updike connection to Stanley Kubrick. We're going to find that in another Kubrick film, Eyes Wide Shut, we have a hidden Easter egg for John Updike. It happens in this particular scene that, fortunately for us, is preserved at idleopuspress.com. You can see the web address here on the screen. And what I've done is I've tried to zoom in, and you'll see here two upside down books on this end table that this scene occurs just after Tom Cruise's character, Bill Harford, discovers the mask in his bed, and he comes clean to his wife, Alice, and she's smoking the cigarette. This is in the morning after, okay? So she's smoking the cigarette. Smoke is going to be a big deal. Now, these two books, one is Updike's In the Beauty of the Lilies, and another is Richard Davenport Hines' biography of W.H. Auden. And so for the next two slides, I'm going to take a somewhat normal interpretation of why these two books are in Eyes Wide Shut. And then in the final slide, I want us to contemplate one of those unhinged synchronicities. So if we can go to slide 3.
Yeah, I do want to interject.
Sure.
A slight synchronicity. We are filming this the week of Easter, at least in the United States. And you're mentioning Easter eggs and rabbits. So the timing is fun.
Not only that, there is a character that we're going to discuss that's name is connected to Easter. That's an interesting thing to think about, given the Ishtar symbolism that is in Eyes Wide Shut, and it's replete with Easter eggs.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. So for slide 3, I'll explain all of this, but to kind of prime us, I want to read the description of Updike's In the Beauty of the Lilies from Amazon, because I think it does it better than I ever could. I listened to this a long time ago. I actually preferred it to Rabbit Redux, although I think Rabbit Redux has a lot to offer. But this was one of the better books that I listened to, I don't know, 2 years ago. In the Beauty of the Lilies begins in 1910 and traces God's relation to 4 generations of American seekers, beginning with Clarence Wilmot, a clergyman in Paterson, New Jersey. He loses his faith but finds solace at the movies, respite from the bleak facts of life, his life gutted by God's withdrawal. His son Teddy becomes a mailman who retreats from American exceptionalism, religious and otherwise, into a life studied ordinariness. Teddy has a daughter, Esther, who becomes a movie star, an object of worship, an all American goddess. Her neglected son, Clark, is possessed of a native Christian fervor that brings the story full circle. In the late 1980s, he joins a Colorado sect called The Temple, a handful of God's elect hastening the day of reckoning. In following the Wilmots' collective search for transcendence, John Updike pulls one wandering thread from the tapestry of the American century and writes perhaps the greatest of his later novels. So I wanted to consider why this book is brought to our attention, why Kubrick has placed it upside down. And I came up with 3 different reasons for why it may be there that would, I guess, fall within the acceptable interpretations. The first, Updike's novel follows a family's decline across generations, from Clarence Wilmot's loss of faith in 1910 to Essie's Hollywood stardom and Clark's tragic cult involvement in the 1990s. This mirrors Bill and Alice's crumbling marriage in Eyes Wide Shut, where Bill's encounter with the secret society's hedonistic underworld exposes the emptiness of their affluent life. The book's presence highlights their shared disillusionment. Bill's rational world unravels, much like Clarence's beliefs, while Alice's emotional turmoil echoes Essie's unfulfilled dreams of fame. Kubrick, likely aware of Updike's earlier nod to his work in Rabbit Redux, may have included this novel to critique the hollow promises of the American dream, a theme both artists explore, set against the 1990s cultural excess. In this moment of vulnerability, the book underscores the couple's search for meaning in a morally adrift world. The second, and this is a little out there, but it doesn't seem that far fetched to me. Lily Schnitzler, daughter of Traum Novelle's author Arthur Schnitzler, died by suicide on Kubrick's exact birthday, July 26, 1928, at the age of 19. A date that coincides with Kubrick's birthday, right? I just said that. Kubrick, known for intricate riddles and symbolic details, might have woven this into Eyes Wide Shut with the inclusion of Updike's In the Beauty of the Lilies. Lili Sobieski's role as Milich's daughter, a vulnerable girl in a corrupt adult world, further mirrors Lily's tragic innocence, and her name Lili reinforces the phonetic link. This July 26 connection, Lily's death on Kubrick's birth date, could be a deliberate riddle, tying Schnitzler's personal loss to the film themes of longing and betrayal. It also aligns with another birthday parallel, Leon Vitali, Red Cloak, who shares Kubrick's July 26th birthday, except he was born in 1948, adding a meta layer to the film's casting. Together, these elements suggest Kubrick paid tribute to Schnitzler's legacy using the date to deepen the film's emotional resonance, reflecting the fragility of innocence in both Lily's life and the narrative's moral decay. And I found these, Jordan, if you look here, I want to get your opinion. But
Mm.
this is Lily. Here's Lily Sobieski's character, Milich's daughter. And in the middle of the screen, I have a picture of Lily. I believe she's about 18 years old here. And here's an image of Kubrick as a young photographer for Look magazine doing a selfie. And I don't know, maybe it's just the style, but to me, not only do they share this exact birthday, but there seems to be an uncanny resemblance between the two. Do you see it, or is that just me?
What I notice is like the eyebrows are like super similar,
Hmm. Yeah.
and perhaps, I mean, her face is more feminine and more rounded, but kind of similar shape.
For
And
me, it
Lisa,
was for
yeah.
for me it was the eyes,
Well,
but
yeah, yeah,
for
yeah.
me it was the eyes, and I'm
They're
not.
both big. Have them locked up here, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Kubrick was obsessed with his novel Tram Nouvelle for like 35 years or something like that. I I assume at some point he did the research and came across this, but I don't know for certain. But it wouldn't surprise me, given what I know about how Kubrick likes to connect birthdays and riddles within his works. It wouldn't surprise me if he felt some sort of kinship with this woman, since he had this kinship with this text.
Mhm.
So, and using the John Updike text would be a way to alert our attention to that. So, can I prove that? I don't think so, but it the coincidences start adding up and you go, yeah, that seems likely. But it could be a total coincidence. And this gets into a larger conversation about what is coincidence and what is synchronicity and what's
Mhm.
intentional.
Yeah, that permeates
Yeah,
pretty
it's
much
good.
every lecture you've been doing.
It permeates all of life, it seems.
Yeah.
All right. So,
I do have a question for you,
sure, what's
and
up?
it's come up across several different presentations, but the upside down of the books, do
Mhm.
you think, and you can say, I don't know, do you think it's simply to bring our attention to it, or is there potentially like an inversion of that theme or those codes or those archetypes at play?
I think on the first level, it's definitely to bring our attention to it, right? I mean, there are books all over Kubrick's films. It seems like this is a particularly strong way of directing our attention to these particular books.
Mhm.
But I could be wrong. I mean, it didn't escape my glance. I think what it's trying to say, I mean, typically when things are upside down, something's really wrong. And that's going to feed, not only could that tie into the death of um, Lily Schnitzler, but I think it could be signaling something with the birthdays and death days of John
Mhm.
Updike and W.H. Auden, which I'm going to talk about in the last slide. But usually when things are upside down, there is some sort of inversion.
Well, that might be an interesting insight into the phrase head over heels.
It might. It might. I typically have a positive connotation with that
Mhm.
because usually associated with love. But
Mhm.
yeah, maybe. All right. Should I go through the third layer here?
Sure.
All right. So we already have had a reference to Easter, but in The Beauty of the Lilies, we have Esther, or Essie Alma, who is a character whose pursuit of Hollywood stardom reflects a modern quest for beauty and fame, embodying a Venus like archetype of allure and desire. In Eyes Wide Shut, Venus symbolism is pervasive, often tied to themes of beauty, femininity, and seduction. The eight pointed star of Venus, or Star of Ishtar, appears at Ziegler's party, symbolizing Venus as a goddess of love, while paintings like Dante Rossetti's Astarte Syriaca, a depiction of a Venus like goddess, adorn settings like Sharkey's Cafe, reinforcing the motif of feminine mystique. This symbolism aligns with Essie's arc as her rise to fame in Updike's novel mirrors Venus's allure, but both come with a cost. Essie's broken relationships and the film's depiction of desire as a hollow, dangerous pursuit. For example, Bill's Odyssey leading to the orgy. Kubrick's inclusion of the book during Bill and Alice's emotional scene might connect Essie's story to Alice, who, framed as a Venus figure herself, noted in her Roman statue like pose at the film's start, grapples with her own desires, reflecting Essie's unfulfilled dreams. So I think all those are acceptable interpretations.
Mhm. What are
Um,
you keeping to yourself, or is there more?
there's more. There's more. And it's probably a complete synchronicity and probably totally unintentional. But to get to that, I think we need to set up Auden in the fourth slide.
Okay.
All right. So this is the other book that's upside down by Richard Davenport Hines. I've not had a chance to read it except for a few pages in preparation for this. But something I know about Auden is his connection to Freud. And Freud is very connected to Trom Novelle and to Eyes Wide Shut. Kubrick's inclusion of W.H. Auden by Richard Davenport Hines, a thematic biography tracing Auden's journey from England to New York in 1939, his role as poet and essayist, and his engagement with politics, sexuality, and faith, might highlight Auden's fascination with Sigmund Freud, whose psychoanalytic ideas resonate in Eyes Wide Shut. Auden's The Age of Anxiety uses dreamlike quests to explore subconscious fears, reflecting Freud's theories of repression, which also influenced Arthur Schnitzler's Trom Novelle, the basis for Kubrick's film. In the scene where Bill and Alice confront their unraveling marriage, the biography's presence could point to this Freudian thread, connecting Auden's psychological insights to Schnitzler's narrative of unspoken desires and Kubrick's portrayal of the couple's emotional unmasking, mirroring Freud's idea of facing repressed truths. Now, is that the case? I don't know. I have a lot of work to still do with that, but I thought this was possibly one route that this could go. And for those of you who've been following along, this is not our first encounter with Auden. Jordan helped me analyze one of the few poems about the Apollo 11 moon landing that you can find on my YouTube channel, where Auden contemplates the banality and the sexual dimension to landing on the moon. So that may come into this. I could not find a reference to Auden's moon landing poem in this text. That just might be something that people want to pursue for further reading, because we know that the Updike text, Rabbit Redux, certainly is some sort of homage to the moon landing and what it meant to society. What do you think, Jordan?
I don't know. I haven't done the reading. I've not done my homework, but it's all
That
very compelling.
Yeah, that'll be for a future one.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the last slide.
Okay.
Okay. It's very difficult to talk about these things because where intentionality begins and ends, what is a coincidence, what is projection, what is a synchronicity, is really hard to say. But I think we have something here that we need to take a look at that is perhaps stimulated by the coincidence between Kubrick and Lily Schnitzler having the exact same birthday. And people might be like, what's the fixation with birthdays? If you watch Kubrick's films, they are replete with birthdays, like an uncanny amount of birthdays. Like 2001, A Space Odyssey, I believe it's a relatively silent film. I think there's only like 45 minutes of speaking in it. And there's like 3 or 4 different birthdays in it. Squirt is asked what she wants for her birthday. Frank Poole has his parents give him a video message about his birthday. We learn about Hal's birthday in the movie, and that's just 2001. We have the recruits sing "Happy Birthday to Jesus" in Full Metal Jacket. We have the birthday party in Barry Lyndon. I could go on and on here. There's a lot of birthdays. And we see in 2001, as I mentioned, we have Frank's parents here. That's the background image. Sing. They they wish Frank a happy birthday, and it just so happens. So when I see that, I was like, okay, I've got to look closer at this. The actor that played Frank in 2001 is Gary Lockwood, and he's still alive. And if you look here on the right side of the slide, you'll see that his birthday is February 21st, 1937. And what's interesting about that is that that was the scheduled launch date of Apollo 1. But if anyone knows anything about space history, the Apollo 1 launch did not happen because there was an accident, there was a fire tragedy on the launch pad on January 27th, 1967. So, why is any of this interesting? So, we have these two inverted books, John Updike and another on W.H. Auden. It just so happens that John Updike's death day is the date of the Apollo 1 fire, and W.H. Auden's birthday was the original launch date. So, both these inverted upside down books are connected to the launch and tragedy days of Apollo 1. And it calls to mind this, because Frank is having his birthday sung to him, you look at this cake. This cake is, I don't know how many candles are there, but it's a lot of candles for a birthday cake, right? So we have fire. And in the scene that provoked all of this, we have Nicole Kidman smoking. So to me, it called to mind the idiomatic expression where there's smoke, there's fire. And I think this is leading us to contemplate something about Apollo 1. Now, what are we supposed to contemplate? Is there some sort of uncanny synchronicity going on here? Is this from eternity? Has God lined this up? Or is Kubrick trying to communicate something to us, especially since Frank Poole or Gary Lockwood is the astronaut that dies in 2001 Space Odyssey, and his birthday is connected to the Apollo 1 launch where all three of those astronauts died. And you can see them up here in the right-hand corner praying over top of the pyramidal capsule as kind of a ominous foreshadowing of their demise. So I think one has to wonder if these books are pointing us back to the Apollo 1 tragedy. Now, the thing that even makes it more mind-boggling is that John Updike passes away in 2009. So, this was Kubrick's last film. It came out on July 16th, 1999, which was the 30th anniversary of the Apollo 11 launch. If Kubrick intended to do that, he would have had to have had knowledge of something that happened 10 years after his death. And that seems highly unlikely and puts this more in the unintentional synchronicity. So are there forces outside of the film that are lining things up that are causing us to look deeper at the Apollo 1 fire, or is this the reflection of my schizophrenic mind making connections where there are none? And I think one would be right to draw both conclusions. So that is what I prepared for today. What do you think, Jordan?
It's all really interesting, and this kind of stuff appears everywhere. Of course, anyone could accuse any of us of selection bias, but
Yeah.
there seems to be some type of underlying language code to either the mini reality we find ourselves in or the larger, I don't know, realm. What
Yeah.
layer of reality these synchronicities play out in, I don't know, but it's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's things like this that make me inclined to not believe in conspiracy theories and to believe in, I hate to say it because I get so much grief for this, some form of simulation theory. Whether it's run by
100%.
some sort of demiurgic AI, like how or not, I'm still trying to work that out.
Sure, or, more traditional a lot of these ideas are old, but even just God, it doesn't
Yeah.
calling something eh, we talk about this a lot, but bringing in that scope of or that lens rather of simulation, it doesn't answer a lot of questions. It really just opens up a new list of them.
Yeah. That's kind of where I'm going with this. So I get a lot of grief for it because a lot of people think I'm uh, lost to Gnostic heresy, but I just kind of have to follow the truth where it is.
Absolutely. And this could be layered. There could be actors who knowingly align themselves with or unknowingly, I think it could be a mixed model
Yeah.
where some of these things are intentional, some of these things aren't, some of these things are totally subconscious. But I think at this point in 2025, parapsychology is mainstream enough to be worth contemplating.
It also could be the case that there are certain individuals who are like creators in some sort of simulation matrix where, though Kubrick would not have had any sort of foreknowledge about John Updike's death date, I mean, he was a powerful enough creator, perhaps like the reality itself wrapped around some intentionality he may have had with it. You know, um, it
Well, that reminds
seems,
me of the monolith and what that's a stand-in for,
yeah,
a node or a point within reality that everything else kind of bends around.
right. All right. Well, I think I said my piece.
Awesome. Well,
All right.
thanks for walking us through this, Luke. And you said out of your recommendations, I think it'd be fun to give people what you thought about the book, if you don't mind, very briefly, and if you'd recommend it, or if there's a different entry point into Updike that you think is better.
I mean, like I said, I've only read two Updike books in my life, and it's the two that I've
Mhm.
done for this presentation. I prefer In the Beauty of the Lilies. That's not to say that Rabbit Redux is bad. I think for me to have a true appreciation of Rabbit Redux, I would have to read the larger tetralogy, which I've not done. So it may benefit from collectively understanding all four books.
That would make sense. All right. Well, I will let you go.
All right. Thank you, Jordan.